This is the Truth Network.
Bible Wonders of Habakkuk. Oh, what a righteous verse we have today. In the third chapter of Habakkuk, we get to the Zaddy verse, which is the 18th verse in the third chapter, and that idea of righteousness. And so, as you might recall, yesterday we talked about that there was, no blossom, and there was no mead, and there was no herd, and there was no anything. But here we find out what's right, the right thing to do when all that transpires. It says, "Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation." So yet he slay me, right? And, I'll still worship. And there's no doubt I will still trust him. And you can see here Habakkuk has come to this conclusion, right? That the right thing to do, the Zaddy realizes that God really, 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 really loves us. And in that case, we know that he is doing what's best in spite of what we may see with our eyes. Things are just not as they might appear to us. And so that word rejoice here, well, there's two words that jumped out to me. The Holy Spirit showed me in this verse that just grabbed my attention and will forever. The word yet is the very beginning of the verse, and that idea is an aleph and a nun and a yud. And so that aleph is often for the Father, and is that idea of Abraham and, Abba. And when we think about that, and then the nun would be faith in the Father, okay? So yet, and we know that at the end of this, that the righteous will live by faith, right? And not have just a little bit of life, but life abundantly. And so if we have that faith in the Father's light, which is that yud at the end, then you can't miss. I mean, just know that it's coming. And it even says, yet in the Lord, Jehovah is the word that he uses for the Lord right there. That yud hey vav hey, which there's enough to rejoice right there. But here's the really next word that jumped out at me. The Holy Spirit just grabbed me with this word. I'll probably be thinking about it forever. Is this word rejoice is different than the Philippians 4 verse, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. That's the next word when he says joy. Okay, but this word rejoice is a word kind of all of its own that's found in some spectacular places in the scriptures, but it begins with the letter ayin. And as we talked about a couple of episodes ago, the letter ayin can be replaced by an aleph because it has to do with provision, and it has to do with God's providence, right? And so the Lord's eyes are always upon us, right? And if that's the case, we know he's looking out for us, however that. And so that idea of the Father's vision, if we could see things the way that God sees them, the way the Father sees them, we would absolutely be delighted. There's no doubt about that. And then the second letter is lamed, which has to do with your heart and has to do with your love and your learning. And so if we could, as the Father, see to love and to learn. And then the last letter, again, just amazing letter to me, especially in this context, is the letter Zion. And that letter has to do literally with us reflecting the Father, but also reflecting is in to consider or to memorize. When it says remember, when Jesus said, remember me, when he, at the Last Supper. And so as we remember what the Father's vision is, nothing could make us any happier. I mean, it's just to see what God really has for us. The Father has plans to prosper us in all sorts of different ways. And so in spite of the fact that what you see may look like there's no cows, there's no meat, there's no fruit, there's no anything that you see, yet, right, I have this complete faith. And then it goes on to say that it's going to have joy in the God of my salvation. And that is the word rejoice, which has to do with this great light of the heart. That is the rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice in the God of my salvation. Well, salvation, Elohim is the word that's used here for God. But salvation, you realize, is Yeshua. And it also ends with an ayin. as Yeshua does, as Jesus is the word Yeshua in Hebrew. And so, in the God of my Jesus, right? And what a beautiful idea, talking about a reason to rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. And so here we really have that in its own substance. And so in spite of whatever you're facing today, and again, I'm still facing the Justice Department. I'm facing a situation with my son-in-law. Numerous family situations that look really difficult. I know that if I could see all this stuff the way that the Father sees it, right? That nothing would bring me more joy. And so yet, if I'm going to live by faith, then I realize that all these things are working out so that more and more and more people will be able to come into the kingdom, however that works, that we all will be able to, worship him together in spirit and in truth, and do that for eternity, which is a really long time, which is the larger story. And so this verse is really, really a hope-providing thing for me. I can't tell you how much I'm just marveled in it this morning, as a lot of things would have me down. But honestly, when I look at this verse, I can't help but know that the Father's love for me is really, really spectacular. Thanks for listening.